Hi, this is Lisa
and Jason
from the Designated Quizzers podcast, and you're listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 307, Wayne's World Movie Review. Welcome to the show. I'm Chris McBrien, along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. This week, we're going back to 1992 to watch and review Wayne's World. We're going to see how this thing holds up after 32 years. But before we get to the movie, what pop culture have you been able to take in since last time, Derek?
Hey, Chris. Well, I had a chance to watch a few things, and I actually had a chance to go to the theater as well, which I'll get to in just a minute.
Nice.
So I'm searching through my Amazon watch list, and I see there's a movie that's been on there for a long time called The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, which is actually a sequel to a movie called The Hitman's Bodyguard, which I remember seeing when it came out, like on video, but I don't really remember much about it other than it's got Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson. And
it sounds bad.
It was okay. And I remembered it being okay. So I thought, well, if I'm going to watch the sequel, then I might as well watch the original first. So I actually went back and watched the first one again. I had no memory of this movie. It was like watching it for the first time. So I had a chance to watch it. Again, it's probably 6.5 out of 10. It's fine. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible. And I thought, well, if I wanted to watch the sequel, which I do, then always good to watch the first one. So, you know, I'll watch the sequel this week, and I'll let you know on our next show how it was. But this week I watched The Hitman's Bodyguard, and it was just fine. If you haven't seen it and you're a fan of Samuel L. Jackson, Ryan Reynolds, and spoiler, Ryan Reynolds plays Ryan Reynolds. So, you know, if you like that,
he always plays himself.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So anyway, so I had a chance to watch that on I think it was on Amazon. Then this weekend, we had a chance to go out to the theater to watch Gladiator 2. And we actually, on our podcast not too long ago, reviewed the original Gladiator from, I want to say it was 2000, if I remember correctly, or 2001, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah. 2000. And I mean, Best Picture winner, Russell Crowe won an Oscar. Like, the first Gladiator movie is fantastic. And so I wanted this one to be really good, but at the same time, you know, when they call these.
When I was a kid, I wanted the moon to be made out of cheese, but it didn't make it happen.
Yeah. So this new genre they call legacy sequel. It's like when they do a sequel to a movie. So a legacy sequel would be like when they do a sequel to a movie many years later. So like Top Gun Maverick was a legacy sequel. The Force Awakens was a legacy sequel. Like 20 years or more, and then they decide, nah, that's a good IP. We're gonna dust it off and do it again. They're now calling those legacy sequels. So, you know, I'm always dubious with these legacy sequels that they just end up being cash grabs.
As well, you should be, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I went into this one. Now, again, high expectations. I made sure to avoid as many spoilers as possible. I made sure to avoid the trailer. Honestly, I didn't even know who was in it. I figure it takes place, obviously, after the first one, and spoiler, Russell Crowe's character dies at the end of the first one, so I knew he wasn't going to be in this, but where is it going to go next? Now, I did know Pedro Pascal was going to be in it because I saw him doing some of the promo, and that's it. So anyway, when I go to see the movie, Pedro Pascal's hardly in it. He's in it for like maybe 20 minutes. The movie's 2.5 hours. It's not about him. He is a minor supporting character on one of the side quests. I was very pleasantly surprised when I saw who else was in the movie. And the guy who is actually the quote unquote gladiator that the movie's about, I've never seen this performer in my life. I looked up his IMDb when I got home and I was like, he's done a lot of stuff. I think he's Irish. I was like, oh, he's done a lot of stuff. Nothing I've seen. Most of the things I've never even heard of, but apparently he's quite beloved. He has a really strong social media following, and he does a lot of modeling for GQ. So like he's a pretty decent looking guy. And obviously if you're going to be the gladiator, you got to have a good physique. So anyway, that's that. So, but long and short, I did enjoy the movie. I didn't think it was anywhere near as good as the first one. It is directed by Ridley Scott, so it definitely has that same flavor as the first one. It's probably one of the better legacy sequels, but if the first one was, let's say, if I gave the first one an A, which I think is reasonable, I would probably give this one like a B-. It's good, it passes, but it's not anywhere near as good as the first one. The best part, again, I'm going to spoil a tiny bit. So if you haven't seen this and you don't know anything about it, just skip over a minute. So Denzel Washington is in this movie, and he is absolutely the best part of this movie. He's fantastic in this. I'm positive they're going to give him an Oscar nomination for it. He probably won't win, but you can tell he's having fun with this. So anyway, I enjoyed it. Gladiator 2.
So I want to go back to this for a second. This legacy sequel kind of thing. It's very interesting. So it's like years go by and then you decide, oh, I'm going to cash in on some old movie that used to be around. Like, it's such a dumb idea.
It's not a remake. It's not a reboot.
Yeah,
it's literally a sequel. Again, you would usually think like, well, a sequel takes place right after it. But no, they make no bones about it. For most of the time with these quote unquote legacy sequels, 20 years have passed in real life and 20 years have passed in the course of the movie. And usually there are a couple of stars, or like, again, Tom Cruise is in this the Top Gun sequel, obviously, and in this one most of the big characters die. Joaquin Phoenix dies, Russell Crowe dies, so they're not going to be in the sequel. Now there are a couple other characters who didn't get killed at the end of the first one that make appearances. Some are in the movie more than others. It is what it is. But no, as far as legacy sequels go, it was decent. I don't know if you necessarily have to run out and see it in the theater. Some of the gladiatorial sequences are pretty cool, and if you see them in the theater, you'll probably be glad you saw them on a big screen. But I was listening to a podcast today about it, and their biggest beef was that it was so much computer generated stuff, whereas the original was one of sort of the last practical effects movies. Like when Russell Crowe's in the thing with the tiger, that's a real tiger, I'm pretty sure.
I don't know about that.
No, not a real tiger. Know. Oh, see, they fooled me. I got fooled by the digital effects.
Yeah, I think everything else was, but this whole idea of these legacy sequels just kind of sticks in my craw.
Yeah,
it would. What are they going to come up? Kramer versus Kramer 2, or like Battleship Potemkin 2?
So then you got to call it Kramer versus Kramer versus Kramer. Like you got to play on the title, right?
You got to be creative.
Yeah. So anyway, and then after all of that was said and done, I also had a chance to watch a documentary.
For 40 days and 40 nights, he watches documentaries. He likes to learn about the world. It's Derek's Documentaries. Derek's Documentaries.
Educate us, my friend, please.
All right. So this is a basketball documentary called Giannis, The Marvelous Journey. I assume you bet on basketball a lot. You know who Giannis is, the Greek freak?
Can't pronounce his last name, but he sure gets a lot of points.
Antetokounmpo or something like that. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm sure I butchered that. I'd never even heard of this guy until I watched this documentary. It goes to show my knowledge of basketball. The guy won the MVP 2 years in a row and then a championship. So, I mean, he is the real deal. I knew nothing about him. I was scrolling through my social media feed a couple of days ago, and there was this thing, and he was working like it was a sequence where a basketball player was doing some charity work or something, and I was like, oh, that's it was on one of these ones where it's like made me smile or isn't this heartwarming or something. And I'm like, okay, who the hell is this guy? And I just happened to click on the comments, and everyone's like, oh my god, this guy's story is so great, from nothing to all this success. I'm like, oh, so I did a little reading on him. They're like, oh, there's a great documentary on Amazon. So I watched it. Again, if you're like me and you knew nothing about this guy, talk about a rags to riches, self-made man kind of story. Like, talk about feel good all over the place. This guy literally came from nothing, worked hard his whole life. When he was finally presented with opportunities, made the best of it, and has just risen to the top of the pyramid through nothing but hard work and perseverance. Like, again, I'm probably underselling this, and people who know his story are like, yeah, duh, we know that. But for me, it was all new to me, so I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It's on Amazon. If it sounds like something you might be interested in, if you're like me, you're not really a basketball fan, and you're just looking for an interesting story, check it out. Giannis, The Marvelous Journey is what it's called.
Very cool. All right. Yeah. So you and I had the chance to get together last weekend. We went to a Comic-Con and collectible show, and we both had a lot of success there. I finished my original 12 action figure set. I got the Jawa. And I also got a bunch of Pokemon cards for my kids. I got a Blade Runner comic. And I got the Marvel adaptation of Temple of Doom. So I made it well on that. That was good. And it's always good to see you. But I got something for you pop culture-wise something I watched. And as you know, Derek, I rarely watch anything even remotely new. So, But you'd be proud of me. So my wife and I started watching a new show. And maybe mostly surprising of all is I'm the one that suggested that we give this show a try. It's called Somebody Somewhere. It's streaming on HBO in the States and on Crave up here in Canada. I'm not sure where I heard about it. I might have been on social media, I think. I feel like I saw somebody say something like, oh, this show's pretty good. Like they suggested it. Well, it's not good, Derek. It's frigging amazing.
Wow.
Oh my God.
I'm just looking it up here, and yeah, I've seen the trailers for it, but I didn't know. I have no idea what it's about, so I've never been motivated to sit and watch it.
I have always subscribed to the idea that one of the keys in life is that you need to find your people. Derek, you and I are nerds. We have found our people. You know, it's an important part of life to do that. You know, some people never find their people. You know, and it's important to fit in. Right. Everybody wants to be associated with others that share their values. And it's just natural. Right. Mm-hmm. Well, this show explores that idea, but it's so much more than that. So I'm not going to spoil anything, but I just want to give you just a brief synopsis about like what's going on. So this woman lives in Kansas and she's mourning the death of her sister. But mostly she just doesn't fit in. She doesn't fit in at work. She doesn't fit in with her family. She's overweight. She dresses kind of sloppily. And she's just struggling to find her place in the world. I mean, who cannot relate to that? you know? Yep. So she ends up getting, involved in this choir meeting at the local church. Someone at work is like, you got to come to choir. You know, we do it after hours. So she gets there. And it becomes kind of apparent that it's like this secret meeting that's going on for what seems like mostly gay people. And they have like nowhere else to go in this rural community, so they go here to fit in. And they have these musical instruments and they play songs and stuff because it's in like the basement of the church. So they encourage her and she gets up on stage and she sings. And immediately you see that singing gives her joy. And it's like the only thing that just allows her to be herself. I feel like this show is like a gift. It's like human and beautiful and just in its plainness. I don't know how else to put it. Like, I feel like we're in the middle of some dark times and we could all use just a little bit of joy. And I feel like this show is what the world needs right now. I'm trying not to overstate it, but this is something else, bud. I strongly recommend you give it a look.
Yeah, I'm just looking it up here, and it says last year in 2023, it was nominated for a Peabody Award. And this year, 2024, it was nominated and won the Peabody Award for entertainment.
It deserves it.
That's high praise.
It is something else. Somebody somewhere streaming on HBO in the States and on Crave up here in Canada. So that's my recommendation. It is so good.
Okay. No, I'll have to check it out. I'm always looking for something new to watch. And so many of the shows I'm watching now are either finishing up or it was like, there's 6 episodes and then you watch them all and you're like, no, what am I doing? So,
oh my God.
Okay.
It's so good.
I'll keep my eye out for it then.
All right. And I got this.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
Derek, did you hear about the guy who was afraid of elevators?
No, I did not. I take the stairs.
He's taking steps to avoid them.
Oh my God. Wow. I almost stepped on your punchline.
You did.
Let me tell you about this Dukes of Hazzard remake I've been imagining.
What are you doing?
Some of this stuff was just too wacky for me.
I am the crotchety old guy who just hates everything new.
They're always having parties.
And then I also watched Three's Company.
This is my lot in life.
Nostalgia is a powerful drug.
It's him and so-and-so in a romantic relationship, and they open an ice cream store.
It's a dinklage.
He was always making moonshine.
He went on to do gay porn.
Oh, my.
What the hell?
So Derek, you and I, we like to go back and watch old movies and see how they hold up. So I thought, what better movie to review that fits that mold than Wayne's World? It came out back in 1992. But the main thing with this movie, like, it's just basically crammed full of pop culture references. And like the SNL sketch and the movie, they were big pop culture phenomena back in the day. So you got a chance to watch it this past week because I made you watch it. Want to give us your initial take on it, please?
Yeah, so let me give you a little of my history of Wayne's World.
Sure.
So I've always been a big fan of Saturday Night Live, even in the years when people are like, oh, those were their worst years. I've always liked it. And I've always found that everyone says, oh, those were their worst years until 4 or 5 years passed. Then they go, remember when that show was great back 5 years ago? And I'm like, when you used to say those were the worst years? And these early 90s, like so many times in the 90s, people were like, oh, this is the worst cast. They're terrible. And then 5 years later, they're like, look at all these great cast members. Look at all these great recurring sketches and stuff. So it is what it is. Take it for what it is. So anyway, big fan of Saturday Night Live. So I'm obviously very familiar with the Wayne's World sketch. It was a huge recurring sketch on Saturday Night Live for a couple of years, very popular. And when they said they were doing a Wayne's World movie, I'm like, I'm all in. Here's all my money, like first in line. I'm there on day one. I literally went on day one with a whole bunch of my friends, and we loved it. It was everything I expected. They took some of the gags from the show and they expanded it. I thought they did a great job. And when you ask people what are the best Saturday Night Live sketches that have ever been turned into movies, it's usually the Blues Brothers and Wayne's World. Those tend to be your number one and number two, and arguably, depending on your age, the order will flip-flop. So for me, it's Wayne's World, and I know for you, it's probably the Blues Brothers, but excuse me. And from a dollars and cents success point of view, this is again another one of the best ones from a dollars and cents. You know, a Saturday Night Live sketch that was turned into a movie that made a lot of money, especially given the years in which it came out. You look at what the kind of money, and I'm sure you'll talk about box office, but you got to think those are $1992. Like, it did very, very well. So when I saw it in the theater at the time, I loved it. When it came out on video, I bought the video. When it came out on DVD, I bought the DVD. I've probably seen this movie in its entirety 20 times. Whenever it's on TV, if I'm flipping around or I see it in the lineup, I'll pop it on, because I know, much like a lot of Saturday Night Live episodes, it's a lot of sketches put together but it actually still has a cohesive story. But I find you can really jump in at any point. There's going to be in a 10-minute segment, you're going to find something you like, and then you're like, okay, I'll pick it up later. So like I said, I've probably seen it in its entirety 20 times or more. I've probably seen bits and pieces of it 30 or 40 times. So I have a big history with this movie, and I could probably have done this podcast without rewatching the film. That being said, I hadn't had a chance to sit down and watch it from start to finish in its entirety in probably 10 or 15 years. I've never been motivated to do it. So when you said, let's go back and watch it, I thought, okay, I'm going to sit down and watch it and pay attention for the 90 minutes, start to finish. And I'm glad I did, because it really, really opened my eyes to how much of a time capsule this is. Like, it is so dated, and it is so locked in 1992. Some of the stuff still holds up. A lot of the stuff, I don't want to say it doesn't hold up, but it is very of its time, which I'm sure we'll go into. So although I enjoyed this viewing, I have some things I want to talk about. So that being said, how was your revisit of this film?
It's funny, going back to watches, it's been a while. And I, like you, I really went in fully expecting this movie just to be anchored to 1992, because it's so reflective of the time it came out.
So much.
And I thought, this movie is not going to hold up. But I will say I was wrong. I felt like this movie came off just as smart and innovative, and probably most importantly, just as entertaining today as it did in 1992. Yes, there's a lot of pop culture references that are, strongly rooted in 1992, but the movie itself, I think it holds up very, very well. So
yeah, I agree. I agree with that exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So it was released on February the 14th, 1992, Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day, yeah.
It made on a budget of
Wait, Valentine's Day, let's see. I would have been in grade 12, so that would have been high school. Mm-hmm. So did I go with my girlfriend? Oh, no, wait, I didn't have a girlfriend in high school. So no, I went by myself. I went with all my guy buddies.
Shocking.
I know that comes as a surprise to all of our listeners.
I know. Okay, the movie had a budget of $20 million, but it actually made $120 million at the box office. So we're going to go back in time to 1992, my friend. Any idea what was the number one movie at the box office, domestic U.S. box office in 1992, Derek?
Was it Aladdin?
It was not. No, it was actually Batman Returns was the number one movie that year. Number 2 was Lethal Weapon 3, followed by Sister Act. Number 4 was Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. And Wayne's World was number 5.
Wow, very respectable.
Yeah. Basic Instinct was number 6, followed up by A League of Their Own. Aladdin was number 8.
Okay, I made the top 10.
And well, because it came out late that year. So it came out in November that year.
Christmas time, yeah.
So it made most of its money the next year. It ended up grossing over $217 million, but it was most of it was the next year. And then number 9 was The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, surprisingly. And number 10 was Under Siege. Not a very good year for movies. Fun. It was kind of a crappy year for movies, I think. I don't know. I'm kind of surprised Wayne's World wasn't the number 1 movie that year. I remember when it came out, it was a phenomenon. It was. Huge.
I saw it more than once in the theater, and I know a lot of my friends did. Again, though, I was the target audience, right?
Yeah.
White male, 15 to 25. Like, that was their target audience. I was in all the time, and I paid multiple times to see it in the theater.
And like when it came out, it had such an influence on pop culture. So in 2015, there was a documentary about Kurt Cobain that came out. It was called Kurt Cobain Montage of Heck.
Okay.
And in it, there's this clip of Kurt Cobain. He's backstage. It was in 1992, late that year, at the Reading Festival, which was one of Nirvana's biggest live performances. Yep. And right before he goes on stage, he turns, he looks at the camera, and he says, "Party on, Wayne."
Nice.
This movie was everywhere. Like the biggest rock star in the world quotes it just as he's about to go on stage at the biggest rock concert, and the whole world gets the reference.
Yeah.
That's pretty big, like catchphrases like "swing" and "we're not worthy."
We're not worthy.
Not, like they all entered the mainstream. They became part of the vocabulary. That is something. That's an accomplishment. It was just a pop culture phenomenon. So, Derek, you mentioned about SNL sketches. I'm glad you mentioned the Blues Brothers and Wayne's World, because do you know how many SNL sketches have been made into movies?
Oh, geez.
I'll tell you what, you're betting that. I want to give you the over-under at 10.
Oh, I would have put it at 20. It's over 10, no question.
It's actually 11.
Okay. Do you have the list?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, let me go. Let me see if I can get these.
I'm going to go. I've got them in order of lifetime gross, the highest grossing to the lowest grossing. Some of them are pretty gross, too.
Okay. I can't put them in order, but let me see how many of these I can get. I don't think I get perfect, but I'm going to get there. Okay, so are we counting both Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2?
No, I didn't count Wayne's World 2.
Okay.
It's the only one of all of them that got a sequel. I shouldn't say
no, that. Blues Brothers 2000.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so so I'm going to count Wayne's World 2 as a sequel. Yes, that's one of the 11. So we got Wayne's World 2.
Okay, Blues Brothers.
Yep.
We've got Stuart Saves His Family, the Stuart Smalley one.
Yeah, that's correct.
We've got It's Pat. We've got A Night at the Roxbury.
Yes.
How many is that? 5? Okay, hold on.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's 6. Okay, hang
5
on.
more.
There's got to be a few. I worked at the video store. Like these were the kind of things that did terrible in the thing.
One of the other ones had a sequel as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I'm just trying to think of the Coneheads.
Coneheads is one. Yep.
Yeah, Coneheads. I'm just trying to think of the cast members. I'm like, what movies did that guy do?
What
movie did that guy do? Was there? Oh, jeez. No, I'm blanking. I don't want to hold up the show. Okay, what did I miss?
So the fourth grossing one you didn't get was Superstar.
Oh, yeah, because again,
it was like Molly Shannon.
Yeah.
It came out.
I was trying to think of women. I'm like, there's got to be at least one where it's like one of the women did something. Yeah.
They made a sequel to Blues Brothers called Blues Brothers 2000.
Blues Brothers 2000. Yeah, I said that.
The Ladies Man and MacGruber.
Oh, the Ladies Man. Ladies Man I actually saw.
Yeah.
MacGruber.
So 11 of them. But
I got most
really,
of them,
it's Wayne's World and the Blues Brothers and a bunch of crap. And then as you go down from the highest grossing to the lowest grossing, the highest grossing was Wayne's World. $121 million.
No question. Yeah.
And the least grossing movie of all of them was It's Pat.
Yeah.
Made $60,000.
Yeah. No. And talk about a movie that doesn't hold up. Oh my God. Like I've never seen it, but I've read it comes up in your socials sometimes where they're like,
it didn't hold up when it came out.
Yeah. They're like, what movies don't hold up by today? And like that one is always on people's list of like it was problematic when it came out. It is super problematic now. Like,
man,
how they ever got away with it. How they ever even thought that would make money. Like, who knows?
Jesus. That's like the lowest grossing movie in history. Okay.
I mean, if Julia Sweeney didn't have that small part in Pulp Fiction, like there would be no apologies. And it's like, okay, at least she's going to always be remembered for, being Raquel in Pulp Fiction.
She gets to take over the junkyard. Good.
Yeah. All this will be hers.
Yep. Okay, so Wayne's World, obviously based on the SNL sketch. But the thing is, the character of Wayne Campbell, it had been around forever or for years before the Wayne's World sketch first debuted on SNL February the 18th, 1989. But Mike Myers had been working on this character for years. So he started on TV on Much Music. You remember that? Canadian MTV?
Do. Yep.
He played Wayne Campbell there. He was supposed to be the cousin of VJ Christopher Ward.
Right. I remember that.
And then he was on CBC in a short segment they called Wayne's Minute. And I went and watched a couple of them. They weren't very good. He really was developing the character. Some of them were bad. But he continued developing the character, and then he did it on stage at Second City in Toronto, and then in Chicago when he went there. So by the time he got to SNL, the character had been around for a while, and he really fleshed it out. But the thing was, when he got to Saturday Night Live, he's like, hey, I got this character. I can do this thing. The producers insisted on adding Dana Carvey because he was more popular at the time.
Right.
To give it more credence, to the sketch. So that's how Wayne and Garth kind of came about. So the plot of this movie is basically the absolute standard format for Hollywood movie plots, which I've mentioned before. It's boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. You just cannot get any more standard than that. The plot, though, in this movie really doesn't matter because this movie isn't about the plot. It's about the characters, right? So it kind of doesn't matter. So let's talk a little bit about the cast. So we'll start with Mike Myers, obviously. Like
no relation. Even though he's from Scarborough and I am from Scarborough, no relation. I think I mentioned this on a previous episode.
And you spell your last name the same.
We spell the name the same. So when I went to university, I went to a city that's about 4 hours away from where I grew up. And when people were always like, oh, where are you from? And I was like, oh, my name's Derek Myers. I'm from Scarborough. And this was 93. So we're talking between Wayne's World 1 and Wayne's World 2. And they're like, oh my God, your name's Myers. You're from Scarborough. Are you related to Mike Myers? I go, yeah, he's my cousin. I used to tell people that. And then I would be like, no, he's not. And you'd be surprised the number of people that were like, that really thought he was related to me. And I was just trying to downplay it. So we always got a kick out of that. But honestly, 100%, no relation, none whatsoever. Just coincidental that he grew up and lived 5 minutes from where I grew up and lived.
So I mentioned he got started at Second City, and then he went on Saturday Night Live for 6 seasons. He was there from 89 to 95. He actually won an Emmy for writing on SNL.
Wow.
And then obviously after Wayne's World, he did Austin Powers movies, and he voiced the Shrek films. So he went on to big things. And it was funny earlier you mentioned how Ryan Reynolds is an actor that just plays himself in every movie. Mike Myers is the complete opposite of that. Every role, he basically plays this totally over the top, almost cartoonish caricature. And it's always different, The only time he didn't do that was So I Married an Axe Murderer. Did you ever see that one?
Oh, I love that movie.
Oh, you like it? I hate it. It's
good.
Garbage.
Oh my God.
Terrible.
Okay, we're gonna watch that on an upcoming episode.
We should, because I remember only seeing it once. I saw it once and I hated it.
It's a hidden gem, diamond in the rough. It's so good.
Then we'll have to watch that for sure, because I remember even in that movie he played like a second role. He wasn't like a Scottish guy, basically fat bastard. I guess he was warming up.
Well, yeah, he played he played 2 roles. He played himself, and then he played his father as the old Scottish guy. Like that's the best part of the movie. And then he's even said that was part of what inspired him for some of the other characters he ultimately ended up doing.
He is notoriously difficult to work with too. He has a bad reputation. The director of this, Penelope Spheris, she had issues with him. I've heard mixed reviews about him on set. Like some people say he's just a perfectionist. I guess if that's the case, he's kind of like Dustin Hoffman in Tootsie. Just trying to bust his ass to get a movie apart, right?
Yeah, but I didn't see Wayne Campbell, or I didn't see Mike Myers win an Oscar. So
true. But the thing is, most people don't want to work with him because he's just so difficult. And he's definitely taken a step back in recent years. Although I guess he did settle down and have kids, so that probably contributed to it. But he hasn't done much in the last little while. Dana Carvey.
I'll ask him at the next family reunion.
Yeah, for sure. Dana Carvey, we got to talk about, because I feel like he's a polarizing guy in regard to this movie. I have heard and read lots of negative reviews about his performance in this movie, but I'd like to get your take on it. I loved him in this. I enjoyed his performance in this. I thought he was pretty good, and but I did read a lot of behind the scenes stuff that, again, true or not, that's why they call it half-assed internet research, because who knows if it's correct or not.
where they were saying, to your point, that Mike Myers was extremely difficult. He felt this was his passion project. And like you had mentioned earlier, in his original conception of the character, he didn't have a sidekick. And Dana Carvey, there seemed to be a lot of resentment that Carvey felt that Myers wasn't giving him opportunities to develop the character or flesh stuff out. And in a movie, any movie where you've got guys like this, they're going to want to do some improv, which is often encouraged, and apparently a lot of the stuff Dana Carvey wanted to do or improv that was received well on set. Mike Myers, the reports are that he was almost jealous of it. Was nope, that can't be in it. Nope, cut that out. So, it's unfortunate if that happened. I read it enough from different sources that I kind of want to believe that it's true. I mean, I don't want to believe it's true, but I do believe that it's true. But no, I think what we saw on screen here from Dana Carvey was pretty good. I didn't really have any problems with it. Honestly, I literally had one problem that was a huge pain in my butt. In the Bohemian Rhapsody scene in the car, which I'm sure we'll talk about more in a minute, when they're all singing, he clearly doesn't know the words to the song. Right. And it really, when you're watching this movie, you're like maybe the first time you don't realize it, but I've seen it so many times. Every time it comes to the scene where they're singing in the car and his lips aren't even moving anywhere near to what's being said. And I read after that it was like he wasn't familiar with the song, and they just shot it. And even he said like that was his big regret, is that he didn't learn the words to the song because they look silly in the scene. Yeah, but I mean, like that scene, like, we can talk about that for a second, because I remember Mike Myers, he fought really hard to keep that song in the movie. The studio wanted like a Guns N' Roses song or something like that. They wanted something new, something that was popular at the time. And they were like, we don't want that. It was like, that's a Queen song from like the 70s, And I mean, good on Mike Myers for keeping it in there, because he was right. But the thing is that scene took 5 days to shoot. So really? Yes. So the actors did not know the song all that well initially. Absolutely. But by the end of 5 days, they did. They had it down pat. But that's why I like how Garth just keeps getting the words wrong. It's almost like because he's just so weird. He just doesn't quite know it. Like, I don't know. I thought it was okay. I didn't have a problem with that. So I would say this. If you want to go back and watch Wayne's World, go back and watch it and just spend the movie looking at Dana Carvey. Just watch him, because naturally you watch Wayne because, he's like the star of the movie, right? I'd recommend just going and watching Garth, because his reactions and his facial expressions, I really liked him in this. I think he's like one of the best parts of the movie. Yeah. He's definitely better than Wayne, I think. Let me ask you this, since we're sort of in this, because this is relevant. Yep. How old do you think Wayne and Garth are supposed to be in this movie? Not how old were the actors. How old do you think the characters are supposed to be? Because that really was something I was trying to figure out this time through. Probably early 20s, I guess, because he's still living with his parents and stuff like that. And they got a cable access show, and they're kind of metalheads. So just out of high school, and they're not, successful. So I'd early 20s, I guess. What do you think? That was sort of my take. I asked my wife that too. I go, how old do you think they are? And she goes, I don't know, like 25. And I go, I think that's probably even a little on the high side. Because exactly, still is the parents. And this is in the 90s when it wasn't nearly as cost prohibitive to move out of your parents' house earlier. And but yeah, to your point, he talks about having all his Joe jobs, so he's clearly bounced around a bit. So he's got to be old enough to have had like 8 or 9 different jobs. But like Garth, I assume Garth owns the Mirthmobile. Like you get that impression. It's this old beat up secondhand car. So it's like, okay, yeah, that was my take as well. So then of course there's the whole thing of, well, if they're supposed to be in their early 20s, these actors are clearly well past that. Right. And that was something that, even though I enjoyed Dana Carvey's performance, it was sort of gnawing on my back of my mind the whole time I watched this, going, I'm not really buying that he's supposed to be 22. Like, he clearly looked like I think he's like in his 30s at this point. He's very young looking though. Well, he is. And I mean, the fact that they got the mullet hair gets away with a lot, but I don't know. It just, in the moment, it didn't bother me as much as it did this time around, where I almost like watched it and sort of went, this looks like two guys trying too hard, which was probably not the case in the moment, but that's sort of how it came across when I watched it this time. I'm not sure what the whole deal was with Garth. Like, I was trying to figure it out as I'm watching it. Like, he's a bit socially awkward. He's kind of shy. He's a bit weird, kind of all rolled into one. Like, I don't know. But Dana Carvey himself didn't really do all that much in Hollywood.
Like he starred in The Master of Disguise. I don't know if you ever saw that, man. That movie was terrible.
I remember seeing the trailer and then it just got terrible. There was one.
I watched it. I remember when it, like years ago when it came out, I watched it on like DVD or something. It was awful. He's like pistachio disguisey. Oh, it was just terrible. But I think it points out the fact, like there's a huge difference between being a character actor on a sketch comedy show where you're known for doing impressions and having broad appeal as a movie star. Doesn't just because you're on SNL and you're good doesn't mean you're going to be, a hit with mainstream audiences. So
yeah, I was going to say there was a couple of movies he was in the 80s that I enjoyed. Not that he was, well, one of them he was not the star. It was a movie called Tough Guys from 1986 with I want to say it was Burt Lancaster, and Kirk Douglas, and he had a supporting role. That was a pretty funny movie. He was in that, and then there was one that he was the lead in 1990 called Opportunity Knocks. Again, it's a dumb movie, but I've probably seen that movie 3 or 4 times, and it gave him a lot of opportunity to do a lot of impressions. Like there's a scene in that movie where he pretends to be President Bush, to make like he's pretending he's like a sales guy and he's trying to convince a client to buy something, and they do this elaborate thing where he pretends to be President Bush. So again, he's able to lean on his ability to do characters and voices and stuff. And again, it wasn't a movie that won any Oscars, but if you see it roll around on your cable channel one night, it's not a bad watch. But
he had a really small part in Spinal Tap too. I remember when Billy Crystal was the mime. He was one of the mimes.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Again,
it was one of his.
It's been a long time since I've watched Spinal Tap. But.
So, Rob Lowe, we'll have to talk about him. Man, he is one good-looking guy. Like it must be so easy to go through life looking like that, But I thought he was really good as the bad guy. I mean, he has had one hell of an up and down career. Like, obviously part of the Brat Pack back in the 80s with the St. Elmo's Fire guys. But he got caught up in that sex scandal where he videotaped himself and his then girlfriend. They were having sex. Problem was, she was underage. And it just
is that what it was? I knew it was like a sex scandal because I remember reading they're like, this was his first big role after the scandals. And I was like, I don't really remember the specifics, but again, I would have been a little bit younger, so that's probably why I don't remember.
Yeah. So I think the age of consent in Georgia where he was at the time was like, I don't know, 16 or something. So he got away, but he videotaped her. So that's the bad part, Oof. But anyway, I guess he got sober, he got married, he cleaned up his act, but it doesn't change the fact that he once videotaped himself having sex with a minor. Like, I don't know, man. It's like you
how old do you think he would have been at the time? I'm not trying to justify
probably 25.
Okay, yeah, no, that's
something like that, maybe, but maybe even older. And the thing is, it's like you could be a guy and get away with almost anything in Hollywood.
Wait, a white, good-looking, rich guy?
I know.
You're kidding me.
I know. If you're morally bereft in the United States, you can get elected as president. Yeah. So I mean, like, who cares? It did not affect Rob Lowe's career because. That happened in 1988, and he was cast in this movie 4 years later. And then he did The West Wing, and then it's like, all's forgotten. He's
and then he was in Parks and Rec, and now he's on that 911 show. Like he's and he's been in movies here and there. Like he's done pretty well. I don't think he's hurting at all. And he's got a really good podcast. I don't know if you ever listened to it, but.
Anyway, I thought he was perfect in this. I thought he was slick, slimy producer. He makes a good bad guy. So he was good.
Smarmy is the term that came to mind. I was like, yep, no, you nailed it, dude.
I want to talk about Tia Carrere.
Oh my God. She's so hot in this movie. Holy cow.
But I got to tell you, man, she was the worst part of this movie for me. So I remember seeing this back in 1992 in the movie theater. And I remember coming out of the movie and saying that movie was amazing. It was awesome in every way, except for her. Mm-hmm. For me, it was the singing. Like, what the hell is up with it? She can't sing. She just screams. It's so bad. I mean, yeah, she looks good, but as soon as she opens her mouth, it's like, God, make it stop. Oh my God, it was terrible. I mean, oh man, it wouldn't even be all that bad, except for the fact that the whole movie revolves around the premise that she's this amazing singer and Wayne helps her become famous. I have no idea why they didn't just dub over her singing, and then to add insult to injury, she can't even act. I mean, oh man, she got started on General Hospital. That's how before she did this.
Oh, really? Didn't know that.
You know, if ever there was a bastion of acting talent, you know, it's soap operas, I guess. And then after this movie, she hasn't done all that much. The majority of her work since then is like voice work.
Well, she did Wayne's World 2. Mm-hmm. Then she was in True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right.
And then she was on a TV show, I think it was called The Relic Hunter, and it must have run at least 5 or 6 seasons. It was like on the Sci-Fi Channel. Again, wasn't a real hit, but probably steady work. And then, I think to your point, it's like, well, she's a name. People might recognize her voice. Let's get her to do voices on cartoons and stuff. And I mean, she's probably still cashing good paychecks, but she never really broke as an A-lister for basically the reasons you said.
So those were the 3 big ones, or the 4 big characters in it. But there was a lot of other cameos in smaller roles, and we should talk about them just briefly. Ed O'Neill, I want to mention.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I hated Married with Children.
Oh,
I didn't like that show. And I've never watched Modern Family, but I liked him in this movie. He nails it. Oh my God. I love that scene when he's with the guy and he's like, you rip his beating heart out of his chest and hold it up for him to see. And then the guy's like, I was just going to file a grievance with the union. You know?
Yeah.
like Ed O'Neill is just so morose in it. So I thought he was pretty good. And then, and the guy that he was talking to that was going to file the grievance with the union was Mike Haggerty. Mm-hmm. So he was the guy that works at the studio. I remember him from Friends. He was the superintendent, Mr. Trieger, and he plays the dad on Somebody Somewhere that I just mentioned.
I saw that. I always remember him from the Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell movie Overboard.
Oh,
he's one of their buddies.
Right.
That's my first memory of but he's been in so much stuff. I'm looking at his IMDb. He has been in everything.
Yeah, very recognizable kind of guy. But like there were so many cameos like Meatloaf and Brian Doyle Murray and Colleen Camp and Laura Flynn Boyle and Donna Dixon. Now, I don't know if you noticed. Oh, also Chris Farley.
Farley.
He was apparently,
he didn't even look that big in that movie.
No, I think he was apparently really nervous shooting this because it was his first movie, you know. Right. So, but when the movie opens up, I don't know if you know. I had never noticed this before. I don't know how this escaped me because I had seen this movie years ago. But I'm watching it, and the movie opens up, and Rob Lowe's laying in bed watching TV, and Wayne's World comes on. Did you notice who his girlfriend was?
Yeah, Zione Sky.
Zione Sky. I'm like, I never noticed that before.
That?
No.
Yeah. And then later in the movie, there's a Red Hot Chili Pepper song, and she was dating Anthony Kiedis at the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, there you go.
Yeah, and from Say Anything. The other one I want to mention is Alice Cooper. So, a couple things about him. First of all, he does not age. But the thing is, it's not like he looks young. It's like he looked 70 in 1992, and he still looks 70 in 2024. You know, but he has not aged since then. My God, I couldn't believe it.
Chris, have you ever seen Alice Cooper perform live?
No.
We had a chance to see him maybe 5 or 6 years ago. He came through. He was an opening act for like a thing where it was like, here's 5 rock bands. He was like the second band. It was amazing. He performed for 40 minutes because, again, he was one of the openers. 40 minutes, solid set, all the hits. You knew all the songs, no question. And like, just like in the movie where he has the big props and spectacles and the snake and everything else, had everything. Even though he wasn't the headliner, just came out as if he was and did his bit. And believe me, the next couple of bands that came out, I'm like, you guys weren't quite as good as Alice Cooper. Maybe you guys should think about rearranging the order of these performers. Like, he just nailed it. And a friend of mine, she's a huge Alice Cooper fan. I think she's seen him like 20 or 30 times. And like she said, every time she sees him, she thinks the show gets better and better. So I would 100% see Alice Cooper if he was coming back to town. He's fantastic.
That doesn't surprise me. I think he'd be pretty good live. He puts on a hell of a show. He always did, right?
Yep.
His scene in this movie is so funny. So, you know, oh my God, he's all like decked out in the makeup and the goth, and then he's pontificating about the origins of the storied history of Milwaukee. And the thing was, this was actually a play on something they did earlier on SNL. So before this, 2 years before, in 1990, Tom Hanks was on SNL, and he played a roadie. I don't know if you remember this or not.
Vaguely.
And Aerosmith came on Wayne's World. And Wayne and Garth are like freaking out that Aerosmith is there and everything. And then they're like, okay, we got to ask you guys some questions. And then they're asking, like, you know, like all just typical stuff, like, you know, what's it like to be so cool? And are those your real lips and all that kind of stuff? Mm-hmm. And then Wayne asks, with recent events in Eastern Europe, do you think communism is on the decline, or is this just a temporary setback? And it's like funny that he asks this of these guys. And Steven Tyler's like, man, that's a hard question. But I got to respond with a qualified yes. Although it seems socialism is in repose, until you repose the Stalinistic era apparatchiks, there'll be no real change in the Soviet Union. And then you're like, okay, that's funny. And then the bass player, Tom Hamilton, he's like, oh man, I disagree. There's never been a blueprint for the dictatorship of the proletariats. So there's bound to be mistakes. But if you study history, you'll see that, since the rise of the nationship, socialism has been a historic inevitability. It's like, what? And so they basically took that concept and they kind of put it in the Alice Cooper bit. So that wasn't really original, but it was like a riff on that Aerosmith thing. By the way, thinking of Aerosmith, whenever I think of Wayne's World, I always think of that song that they played on the SNL sketch. And for some reason going into this, I thought it was in the movie. Because like, Wayne's World, it's party time, it's excellent. I don't know why. For some reason,
that was in the movie. Was that not on the show?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't the Aerosmith one. So.
Oh, no. Yeah.
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 I wanted to mention, because we always compare old movies to today. I want to bring up this YouTube, because I feel like this movie was YouTube before there was YouTube.
Yeah, my wife and I were talking about that when we were watching it earlier, and that's what she said. She goes, they couldn't make this movie today, set today. They wouldn't, like, who has cable access anymore? This is just YouTube before YouTube. So you're 100% right. And they wouldn't, like, they had all that camera equipment. They had a truck outside with a satellite dish. Like, talk about pre-internet, pre-YouTube. Today, you would just shoot that on your phone and upload it, or do a live cast, and it's like, there it is. And you'd be one of thousands of people doing something like this. So the fact that they were doing this, like, this concept worked in the 92 because, it was interesting. It was different. It was edgy. And at the time, there was a void. So they're filling that void. Now, there's millions of them out there. So, yeah, you'd really have to take it in a different direction. Again, that's part of its 1992-ness of it, is there's some things in here that are so of its time. But I feel like they were doing stuff that what a lot of YouTubers are doing now. Oh, for sure. It just, except today's YouTubers suck. I know I'm an old guy. I'm obliged to say that, but it's true. All they do now is, like, they play video games like Minecraft and just yell at the screen. I don't know. Maybe we need to do more yelling. Yeah, I guess. My kids would maybe listen. Okay, I want to talk about breaking the fourth wall. Big part of this movie. So it's been done forever in movies. Yeah. But never quite like this. This is so unique. So usually in movies, the lead character does it. Mm-hmm. But here, everybody does it. Yeah. Yeah, and multiple characters do it, and they play with it too, right? Like right at the end when they're like, "Let's do the different endings." Like, they know they're gonna use this convention, and they're like, "How do we make it different than everybody else?" And I think they did a great job. Ed O'Neill basically gives his lines to the camera. Garth, I like how Garth goes under the table and he takes the camera down with him. He's like, "I want to talk to the audience." And then at one point, I think it's in the second act because Wayne's all bummed out. And he's like complaining, and the camera just starts panning away from him. Yeah. He's like, "Oh no, hold on." And he apologizes. He's going to change his attitude, like it comes back to him. So the whole thing was very clever, I thought. Well, and when Ed O'Neill first starts talking to the camera, Wayne even comes and goes like, "Hey, only Garth and I get to talk to the camera. Come on." And he literally pulls it away. Exactly. So again, it's that acknowledgement that there's the camera there. Yeah. So you and I are Canadian, so we got to bring up some Canadian references here, sure. I think. So one of the first ones is when they go to Stan Mikita's Donuts. So any Americans that are listening, a huge part of Canadian culture is Tim Hortons, which back in 1992 was pretty much everyone referred to as Tim Hortons Donuts. And since the movie takes place in Chicago, they just used a Chicago hockey icon in place of Tim Horton. I guess they could have went with Bobby Hull's Donuts, but I don't know, or someone else that was big before. I think the idea is that you wanted a name that people outside of Chicago would probably not know. And even a lot of people in Chicago probably like, who the hell is Stan Mikita? Oh, Stan Mikita, I think was the right choice. He was like one of the best centers in hockey history. And he's like one of the quintessential Blackhawks of all time. So yeah, I thought he was good. And then other Canadian references, road hockey. So Derek, you know as well as I do, when those guys are playing road hockey, it was exactly like that. It was like, game on.
And then you bring the net out, and then a car, you'd have to move the nets. Game on, and go back. Like, we did that as kids, like all the time.
Yep, for sure.
The Gasworks, I want to mention too. Did you ever go to the Gasworks?
No, I'm familiar with it, but again, I wasn't really a big club guy when I was.
Yeah, you're a bit younger. It was
Yeah.
it was a huge metal bar in Toronto for years.
Yeah.
Bands like Triumph and Max Webster and Rush, they all played. It closed in '93. And then I love in the movie how they go to the Gasworks, and then when he first goes up, he's like, "Who's playing tonight?" And the guy's like, "The Beatles." And he's like, "Are they any good?" "No, man, they suck." I love that scene. I laughed.
We said that's again this. So this movie has a lot of good quotes.
Oh, it does.
And that, funny enough, we say that all the time whenever someone was. I don't know, like it comes up in my house probably once or twice a month where someone just says that. Are they any good? They suck. And it's like, but what they say, they go, they're like, Jolly Green Giants, Beatles. Are they any good? They suck.
I should mention too, during that scene at the Gaswork, I had the subtitles on my TV. I don't know why, they were just on. Okay. And when Tia Carrere's band was playing, I probably should have had it on mute because she was singing. But anyway, they're playing and the subtitles said face melting guitar solo. So I don't know if the subtitles had that Wayne's World bent to them. I thought it was kind of cool. So we mentioned this movie has tons of pop culture references, but like a lot of them are rooted in 1992. I think if you watched it today, or like if I had my kids watch it today, they wouldn't get a lot of this stuff, like the clapper and the chia pet, the Grey Poupon. And
references to older shows. There's the whole thing where they do the Laverne and Shirley montage. Like, people won't get that.
Nope.
And they go to they're going to Milwaukee. It's like, did you know that Laverne and Shirley took place in Milwaukee? I mean, you do because you watch the show. But
exactly.
I don't think younger people are going to know. They're not going to understand that. And yeah, there was a lot of references to things that in the moment people would have got. But
Terminator 2 when the cops coming out there,
have
like
you
that,
seen this
and the
movie?
Grey Poupon. Do you have any like all that stuff was like just coming at you. One thing I wanted to ask you, just going back to the Gasworks for a second, that scene, Garth gets like knocked over, so he goes out and to his car and he gets this like super powered taser and comes back in and shoots the guy. I feel like if you did that movie today, like he would probably be like shot and killed. If you tried to go back out to your car and like come back in with this big gun or something like that, like it was just weird. So it was bizarre. I mean, it was funny, but at the same time, when you start to think about it, you're like, it's like why did he do
straight
that?
Up just assaulted this guy with this taser thing? Like,
I don't know.
He could have killed him.
Yeah. One thing that made me laugh, lots made me laugh in this movie, but I love when they get into the studio and they like, up the production values on the show, and they've got like a producer, and they've got like, a stagehand and stuff. And the guy's doing the countdown to roll tape. Yeah. He's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then he's like, you guys don't talk along. And then they do it again and they hum it. And then they mouth the words. And then they finally stop. They finally get them to stop. And you can, again, if you just watch Garth, it's taking everything he's got to hold it together to not do anything. Mm-hmm. To say that, I was just laughing my ass off at that. It's so funny. Oh man.
One of the small gags that always makes me laugh that a lot of people miss is when probably about half an hour into the movie, they go to pick up Garth's car. It's been in the shop and it's like, oh, it's $47 or something, and so they're paying the money. And it's a scene where Garth's playing with the drill, the rivet gun or whatever it is, and he ends up scratching the car. Right. It's that scene. And the guy who's the employee who he's paying, he says, hey,
it's Phil. It's the guy that was partied out.
You should have been at the Gasworks on Friday. There was this band. And then like Wayne keeps saying, yeah, we were there. And I'm like, not only were Wayne and Garth there, but the guy was there. He's the guy they pick up in the car who's in the backseat in the middle.
Yeah,
I didn't.
He's the guy that was partied out. Yeah.
Yeah. The first couple of times I didn't catch that that's who it was.
Yeah, it was him.
And then I was like, oh my God, that to me, it made it even funnier that the guy was just so wasted. He had no memory of them being there, but he obviously remembers being there, but he doesn't remember that they picked him up. They sang Bohemian Rhapsody. They brought him there. They were there. And Wayne keeps saying, are you mental? We were there. Like, it just made me laugh so much. I don't know why. I just thought it was so funny.
So I wanted to mention the gratuitous sex scene. So first of all, Wayne looks so different with his ball cap off.
Yes, that's the only scene where he's not wearing the hat.
Yeah, because the wig looks like super fake. And then of course in that scene you got to see him in his tighty whities with his scrotum on display. I was like, yikes! Oh my god. A lot of product placement again. It's kind of going back to the pop culture stuff.
Yeah, there's the whole scene where they do the Pizza Hut and the Doritos, like they just make fun of it. They acknowledge it and make fun of it, sort of speaking right to the camera. Like that's how you're going to do it, right? Like you acknowledge it and just make fun of it. And to me, that made it even funnier. Like then I was like, oh, come on, do two more. Just do one more. Come on.
I think it was because, at that time in the early 90s, this rampant product placement was everywhere. And so they were just making fun of that. And I loved it. The way they did it. And Garth with all the Reebok stuff on. It was awesome.
So even in the, they may acknowledge it in the credits, like one of the things listed is Pepsi Cola as itself was in the credits.
Nice.
So again, they continue to sort of wink, make fun of it because they're like, well, if we're going to go all in, let's go all in. So
I want to mention the scene when he gets fired because he writes the insults on the back of the note cards for the audience to see when he makes fun of Noah Vanderhoff. And Garth has to go solo.
Yeah.
It's so funny. And then one guy is even like, did you ever see that movie Scanners? Right before the guy's head explodes? Like, Garth can, again, he's so socially awkward and stuff. He's fine being on the show. He's fine being on TV. But when the spotlight's just on him and he's got to carry the show, he just crumbles.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny. So you mentioned lots of quotes. Any stand out to you that you use, from this movie?
Geez.
I got a couple. So
I mean, I don't know. Even like little stupid throwaway ones, like when you talked about the gratuitous sex scene where he's like camera one, camera two, camera one, and he's doing his eyes. I find myself, I do that a fair amount too, and I know it's definitely because of this. And it just, again, I sort of chuckle every time I do it.
I like when they're ordering the Chinese food and he's like, I'll have the cream of some young guy.
Yeah.
I don't know why that made me laugh. I've said that to my wife before. I've used that quote. And then I love when Garth is like looking around the guy's apartment and he finds the condoms. He's like, ribbed for her pleasure. Ew. It's like, of course he would think that's gross.
Yeah. Well, and when in that same scene, he's like, buy feeble cable access show and exploit them. He's like, geez, I'd hate to be those guys.
Yeah, that was pretty funny too. And then of course the no stairway denied. That was a good quote. And then probably one of the most famous ones is just not. Like it started a whole thing. That and way too, when they say way, no way, and all that. I just want to talk about the ending of the movie. So again, it had been a long time since I'd seen this movie. And it get to the end of the movie and it threw me for a loop. So when Frankie Sharp walks in and he's like, I'm really glad to meet you, but you're just not what we're looking for. Right. And I'm like, what? And then she's like, I hate you, Wayne. And then there's like the fire and the house burns down. And and then I love how Wayne and Garth pan across the screen with like that the dream sequence effect. And they're like, okay, let's do a different ending. We're not going to end it like this. And they do the Scooby-Doo ending, which was again another pop culture reference. That was good. And then they do the happy ending, of course. But it threw me for a loop at the beginning. I was like, what? What's going on? I forgot all about that, So the movie ends. You mentioned the sequel. I have never seen Wayne's World 2.
Really?
Never. So
I liked it. I mean, I don't think it's as good as the first one. I'm trying to think of the specifics. So again, it's what's her name? Tia Carrere is still dating like Wayne. They're still together, and she's become like a big rock star now, or is becoming a big rock star, and he's still doing the show. And then they end up putting on a music benefit show called Wayne Stock, and then a big part of the plot is them trying to get all these musicians to participate in the Wayne Stock music festival. And of course the Tia Carrere's band is going to be featured as well. So Aerosmith is actually the big music band in the sequel. So nice. that harkens back to their original involvement with the comedy sketch. And there's a much larger sort of subplot that features Garth. And again, I'm sure Dana Carvey was like, well, I'm not coming back to do a sequel unless you actually give me stuff to do.
Right.
Yeah, it was okay. It wasn't fantastic. It was, I think it's worth watching. I mean, I picked it up on video, but again, in the moment when it came out, it was a big deal, so everyone ran out to see it, and it was just okay.
You know me, I liked some of these movies at the time, and I just never buy in on the sequels. I just not really do that. But do you want to give it a rating out of 10?
I'm thinking probably a 7.5 or an 8, even though it is very of its time. I think it's important that we have these sort of time capsules. Unlike something like Revenge of the Nerds, where although that is of its time and there's a lot of problematic things, I didn't really feel there was a lot in this that was problematic to the point where it was like, ooh, we can't go back and watch this again. Like, I think it had a lot of stuff that is very, very dated in the year that the movie came out, and it is what it is. And like we said, you watch it today, if you're a younger person, there's so many references that are going to go way over your head. But if, like you and I, we were around then, I watched it, I got all the references. I still laughed at a lot of those references. So yeah, I'm going to go with an 8 out of 10. I'm
going to go higher than that, because I thought it was fantastic. Like I mentioned, I thought it was entertaining. I thought it held up. I thought it was smart. I thought it was inventive. I think it stands the test of time. I'm going to go at a 9 out of 10. Wow. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was really, really good. The only thing keeping it from being a 10 out of a 10 is Tia Carreri's horrendous singing. I mean, you take that out of the movie, like it would be a 10 out of 10. I thought it was really, 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 really good. So, all right. On that note, let's have some
fun with Caveman.
All right, my man, it was over to you to do some trivia for us this week. What do you got?
All right, we're going to play a little game we like to call Pick the Flick.
Pick the flick. Yeah, pick the flick. You get the synopsis, then pick the flick. You get the year, pick the flick. All right, so we know how this works. You give me the year and the synopsis, and I have to guess the film, right?
Yepper. Okay. Now I'm going to make it even easier for you.
Yeah.
All of these movies are from 1992, the year Wayne's World came out.
Oh,
all
nice.
of them. All right. And they're all comedies or comedy adjacent. Some of them are like dramatic comedies. But when I typed in comedies from 1992, I just grabbed a bunch off the list.
Sure.
So I'm gonna have some fun with you at the end of this. No, you know what? Let's do it at the beginning. The first few questions, I've got 6 questions here, 6 movies that came out from 1992.
Sure.
All of them have at least one Saturday Night Live cast member in the cast.
Interesting.
So 6 movies we're going to go through. Again, they're not necessarily the star of the movie, but they are in the movie. Okay? So I'll give you the synopsis, and all of these ones, until I tell you otherwise, they're all from 92, no question, and these ones all have at least one Saturday Night Live alumnus in the cast. Okay?
Sure.
So, first one. A Chicagoan inherits an old yacht. He, his wife, daughter, and son fly to a Caribbean island and hire a dubious captain to sail them on an adventure to Miami.
It's not What About Bob, is it?
It is not What About Bob. If you want a hint, I will tell you the Saturday Night Live cast member.
Sure.
It is Martin Short.
Oh, is it Last Resort or something like that?
No, it is not. No,
I don't know.
Wrong. No, it's called Captain Ron.
Oh, I've heard of that before. It sounds terrible.
Yeah, I figured you would have. All right. Next one. A successful executive and womanizer finds his lifestyle choices have turned back on him when when his new female boss turns out to be an even bigger deviant than he is.
And it's got someone from Saturday Night Live in it?
Yep. I can tell you who it is if you're not sure.
Yeah, give me the person.
Eddie Murphy is the star of this movie.
I don't know.
It's called Boomerang.
Oh, that came out in 92? I feel like that was like 10 years after that or something.
Yeah. Oh. All right. I know 92 is not your jam, so some of these might be a little more difficult. All right. Here's another one with a Saturday Night Live alumnus. After a freak accident, a company executive turns completely invisible, goes on the run, and becomes haunted by a treacherous CIA official whilst trying to cope with his new reality.
Sounds like My Blue Heaven.
It is not, because he turns completely invisible.
I don't know.
It's got Chevy Chase in the lead role. No,
I still don't know.
it's called Memoirs of an Invisible Man.
Oh, I remember hearing about that. That movie's stupid too, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Next one. A kind-hearted street urchin and a power-hungry old man vie for an artifact that has the power to make their deepest wishes come true.
And it stars somebody from Saturday Night Live?
Mm-hmm. I will give you a hint. I'll give you 2 hints.
Sure.
It is animated,
Okay.
and the Saturday Night Live alumnus is Gilbert Gottfried.
Fern Gully?
Nope. Aladdin.
Oh, I have no idea.
All right. Yeah, these ones are a little tough. Okay, next one. When a decorated soldier inherits a toy-making company and begins making war toys, his employees band together to stop him before he ruins the company's name forever.
Is it Toy Soldiers?
It is not.
I don't know.
It is the alumnus in this one is Joan Cusack.
No idea.
It is called Toys. It stars Robin Williams.
Oh,
All right.
another dumb movie.
The
1992
last
sucked for movies.
Yeah, the last one with
Clearly.
my Saturday Night Live alumnus before we go into a couple that are hopefully a little easier. A security pro finds his past returning to haunt him when he and his unique team are tasked with retrieving a particularly important item.
No idea.
The cast member is Dan Aykroyd. No idea?
No idea.
The movie is called Sneakers.
Oh.
The primary star is Robert Redford. I actually really like this movie. It was a lot of fun.
1992 sucked.
Yeah, well, it had its ups and downs.
Yeah,
Okay. Those are all the ones with Saturday Night Live people in it.
Okay.
So these, now I'm just going to read you a few more. These are all from 1992. Okay. When a nightclub singer is forced to take refuge from the mob in a convent, she ends up turning the convent choir into a soulful chorus complete with a Motown repertoire until the sudden celebrity of the choir jeopardizes her identity.
Oh, that was Sister Act.
Yes. All right. Okay. Got to get you a few popular ones here. All right. A self-centered Minnesota lawyer is sentenced to community service coaching a ragtag youth hockey team.
Oh, that has to be the Mighty Ducks.
Yes. There we go. See, I knew you'd be better with the bigger name movies here. Okay. A boy is separated from his family again when he accidentally boards a flight to New York City during a Christmas trip to Miami. However, he crosses paths with the same burglars who now plan to rob toy stores on Christmas Eve.
Home Alone 2 Lost in New York.
Oh, you got the full title. Good job, buddy.
Yep. We watched it at Christmas time.
All right. I only got 2 more here for you. When they find a frozen caveman in their backyard, 2 high school outcasts thaw him and introduce him to modern life while he in turn gets them to actually enjoy life.
That was Encino Man, wasn't it?
Yes. And do you know who played the bad guy in Encino Man?
Oh, God.
It was the guy from Wayne's World who was one of the Wayne's crew, the DeLuise.
Oh, very
He
cool.
was one of the technicians. I was like, oh my God.
Nice.
So, all right, last one. 2 New Yorkers accused of murder in rural Alabama while on their way back to college call in the help of one of their cousins, a loudmouth lawyer with no trial experience.
Oh, that's got to be My Cousin Vinny.
Yes. All right. Okay. So, yeah, you didn't do so well on the ones with the Saturday Night Live people. Honestly, they weren't all A-listers, but you got all the other ones. So, Good job. I know 1992 is not really your bag. So,
No.
All
And it was, like I say, right off the top, you can tell it was a crappy year for movies. But all right, so next time we come back, we're going to review another film, but it's over to you to nominate a movie. What would you want us to watch?
Well, I'm just double checking to make sure it's available on our streamers. It is. It's on Disney Plus. Okay, we are going to go and watch the extremely relevant, more so today than ever, classic cult comedy hit from 2006, Idiocracy.
Oh,
Have you ever heard of Idiocracy?
not really. No.
All right.
This
It's
would
written
be
and
new to me.
directed by Mike Judge of Beavis and Butthead fame
Okay,
and
yeah.
Office Space.
Yeah.
And the general premise is in the first 5 minutes of the movie, a guy basically signs up for a science experiment, goes awry, and he's put into hibernation, and he wakes up like 100 years later, and the world has become the dumbest place. Like over generations of breeding, all the stupid people have had many, many children, and all the smart people have not. And so he's just an average guy, but he is considered a super genius by today's standards because everybody else is so idiotic. And when it came out, it was not a huge hit. It has since found legs on streaming and on cable and such. And as our world continues to move in the direction that it has, this movie is becoming more a cautionary tale than a comedy. And I think it would be good to go back. I haven't seen it in a long time, but they constantly are putting clips of it online as they are relevant to things happening in today's society. So I'm sure you've never seen this before. No. So I'm interested in getting your fresh take on this 18 years after its original release. I haven't seen it in its entirety in at least a decade. I'm really looking forward to going back and watching it.
So he went ahead in the future 500 years. It sounds more like he went ahead to 2024.
Yeah, no kidding. So anyway, it's on Disney Plus. So you should have no problem finding it. And it stars Luke Wilson and Maya Rudolph. So you're going to see a few familiar faces in this one.
Sounds good. So we'll watch Idiocracy. We'll come back and we'll review that next time. And until then, I'm Chris McBrien. That's Derek Myers. And we both want to say thanks for taking the time to listen to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.